What would you do if you had just $500 to your name? Your last hope in a world that's already taken everything from you. Would you risk it all on an abandoned cottage that no one wanted? That's exactly what one heartbroken mother did. But what she found inside those broken walls wasn't just dust and decay. It was a secret buried in time. A secret that could change everything. Before we dive into the story, let us know what you'd do in her shoes. Hi, my beautiful family. Let me begin with a prayer straight from the heart. Dear God, please bless every soul watching this video. Fill their lives with peace, joy, and endless love. Amen. Welcome back, my people. You are not just viewers. You are my light during the dark days, and my reason to keep going. To all new family members, welcome to the family. Please subscribe to the channel and introduce yourself in the comments. I truly want to know more about you. My beloved family, every story I bring is not just words. It is my sweat, my sleepless nights, and my sacrifice. When you leave early, it cuts deep as if my hard work is unseen and my voice unheard. Please stay till the end. I love you. Now let's begin the story. Elizabeth Walter was 32 years old, a recently divorced black mother whose life had been unraveling for the past 6 months. She'd once been a dedicated administrative assistant at a bustling marketing firm, but the divorce had upended everything, forcing her to quit when childcare became impossible. Now, she was piecing together survival with sporadic cleaning gigs, scraping by to support herself and her 6-year-old daughter, Chloe. Chloe wasn't just any child. She battled severe asthma that demanded pricey inhalers and a stable environment, something Elizabeth could hardly provide even in better times. These days, Elizabeth juggled odd jobs that kept her on her feet from dawn till dusk, barely carving out moments with Chloe, barely catching her breath, and barely holding it all together. Then came the knockout punch. Their motel manager announced renovations, giving her just 30 days to vacate. In a housing market squeezed tight by rising costs, nothing fit her slim budget. Nothing at all. All that remained was $500 tucked away in a worn envelope. Her final scraps from the divorce settlement, pieced together dollar by dollar after months of scrimping. It was their fragile lifeline, and she knew that spending it meant stepping off the edge into the unknown. That's when Elizabeth recalled something her late mother used to whisper during tough times. Sometimes, the biggest risks lead to the truest freedoms. And that's precisely what she was about to chase. One restless night, as Elizabeth scrolled through overpriced rental ads on her cracked phone screen, a listing flickered into view. The county was auctioning off foreclosed properties. She'd never dreamed of owning a home, not with her shattered credit and empty pockets, but desperation nudged her to click. Most lots demanded thousands up front, far beyond her grasp. But then she spotted it, an old cottage in Maplewood, a faded rural spot, with a minimum bid of just $500. The description was stark. Abandoned cottage, roughly 1,200 square feet. Major repairs needed. Sold as is, no utilities, vacant for over a decade. The photo revealed a sagging structure with boarded windows, a weed-choked yard, and a roof bowed like weary shoulders. It screamed trouble, but it was a potential home, with space, and the bid was less than a week's motel fee. Elizabeth's closest friend, Jasmine, thought she'd gone off the deep end. "Liz, girl, there's got to be a catch," Jasmine said over a hurried phone call the next day. "That place could be riddled with rot or worse. What about Chloe's breathing? And how would you even begin to make it livable? You'd be pouring good money after bad. I get it, Elizabeth replied, her voice steady despite the doubt gnawing inside. But in 29 days, we'll be on the street. No landlords touching my application with this credit mess. This could be ours. Something solid that nobody can yank away. On auction morning, Elizabeth skipped a cleaning shift, slipping into her sharpest blouse, the one she'd worn to court during the divorce. She folded the $500 envelope into her bag, her fingers shaking as she helped Chloe into her coat for school drop-off. "Wish Mommy luck today, sweetie," she murmured, planting a kiss on her daughter's forehead. "For what?" Chloe asked, her wide eyes curious. "Something special," Elizabeth promised. "Maybe a new adventure." The county hall loomed large, its echoing corridors buzzing with folks who seemed at ease. Investors in crisp attire, flippers with knowing nods. Elizabeth gripped her bag closer, feeling exposed in her thrift store finds, but she straightened her spine and took her seat. When the cottage lot came up, her heart thundered. "Minimum bid, $500, the auctioneer called. Silence stretched. Elizabeth raised her hand, her voice barely above a whisper. 500. No counters. No higher bids. And just like that, the gavel fell. She won. It wasn't much. But for the first time in months, something in her life finally said yes. The drive to Maplewood took longer than Elizabeth expected, winding through rural backroads where the autumn leaves clung stubbornly to branches, as if reluctant to let go of the season. Chloe sat in the back seat of their battered old sedan, the one Michael hadn't bothered to take, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her small face pressed against the window. The 6-year-old's breaths came in soft wheezes, a reminder of the asthma that never quite let up, especially in the damp chill of October. Elizabeth glanced at her in the rearview mirror, her heart twisting. This had to work. For Chloe's sake, it had to. As they approached the town, the world seemed to slow down, like stepping into a faded photograph. Maplewood wasn't so much a place as a memory of one. Half-empty shops with dusty windows displaying signs that read, "Closed until further notice," overgrown yards swallowing rusted swing sets, and locals who moved with the deliberate pace of people who'd seen better days. A few stared as Elizabeth's car rumbled past, their whispers carried on the wind like secrets too heavy to keep. She caught snippets through the cracked window. New folks. That old Miller place. Elizabeth gripped the steering wheel tighter, ignoring the prickle at the back of her neck. Small towns had long memories, her mother used to say. But memories couldn't pay the bills. They turned onto a narrow dirt lane flanked by towering pines, their needles whispering in the breeze. And there it was, the cottage. It hunched at the end of the path like a forgotten relic, its once white paint peeling in long, sorrowful strips, revealing weathered wood beneath. Ivy choked the mailbox, twisting around it like possessive fingers, and the windows were cracked, some boarded up with splintered plywood. The roof sagged in the middle, as if burdened by years of neglect, and the front porch creaked ominously even without a foot on it. Elizabeth killed the engine, the silence rushing in like a held breath released. Chloe unbuckled herself and hopped out, her eyes wide with a mix of wonder and caution. She wrinkled her nose, inhaling deeply despite the risk to her lungs. "It smells like a story, Mommy," she said, her voice bright and innocent. "Like the ones in your books, with hidden treasures and ghosts." Elizabeth forced a smile, though her stomach knotted. "Ghosts? She hoped not. Let's make it our story, okay, baby? A good one." She grabbed their duffel bags from the trunk, the sum of their possessions after the motel purge, and led Chloe up the uneven steps. The door groaned open on rusty hinges, revealing a dim interior thick with dust motes dancing in the slanted afternoon light. The air was musty, laced with the faint scent of old wood and something metallic, like rain on tin. They spent the rest of the day exploring, or what passed for it. The living room was sparse, a sagging sofa covered in a faded floral sheet, a stone fireplace blackened from long-ago fires, and floorboards that protested underfoot. The kitchen had a rusted sink and empty cabinets, while upstairs, 2 small bedrooms overlooked the overgrown backyard. Chloe claimed the smaller one, declaring it perfect for adventures. Elizabeth's heart swelled at her daughter's resilience. How could a child see magic where she saw only decay? As dusk fell, they unpacked what little they had. Sleeping bags on the floor, a few canned goods, and Chloe's breathing machine, plugged into the one working outlet Elizabeth had tested. Dinner was peanut butter sandwiches by flashlight, with Chloe chattering about turning the yard into a garden. "We can plant flowers, Mommy. And maybe carrots, like in the bunny book." Elizabeth nodded, her mind already racing ahead to repairs. Leaky roof, broken windows, the endless list. But for now, this was home. Theirs. The first night settled over the cottage like a heavy blanket. Elizabeth lay awake in her sleeping bag beside Chloe, who had drifted off quickly, her small chest rising and falling in rhythmic peace. The walls creaked as the house cooled, settling into the darkness like an old man easing into a chair. Wind rattled the panes, and somewhere distant, an owl hooted mournfully. But then came the knocks, faint, irregular, like knuckles rapping on wood from far away. Elizabeth sat up, straining her ears. Mice? Branches against the siding? She told herself it was nothing, pulling the bag tighter around her shoulders. The next morning, fueled by cheap coffee brewed on a portable stove, Elizabeth began cleaning. She swept the floors, coughing through clouds of dust, and pried up a loose floorboard by the fireplace to check for rot. That's when she found it, an old silver key, wedged in the dirt beneath. It gleamed faintly in her palm, engraved with the initials HM. She turned it over, curiosity sparking despite the grime. A skeleton key, maybe for a door or a chest long gone. She pocketed it, figuring it was just another remnant of the past, like the house itself. A knock at the door startled her, real this time, sharp and insistent. On the porch stood an elderly woman, her white hair pinned in a neat bun, holding a foil-covered pie. "Martha Keene," she introduced herself, her voice crackly like autumn leaves. "Live just down the lane. Saw the lights on last night. First time in years. Thought I'd bring a welcome. Apple fresh baked." Elizabeth accepted it gratefully, inviting her in for a moment. Martha's eyes roamed the room, lingering on the fireplace. "You're brave, taking this place," she said, settling into the sofa with a sigh. "Hasn't had peace since the Millers vanished back in '82. Henry, his wife, and their little girl, poof, gone one night. Folks say the house, well, it remembers." Elizabeth felt a chill, but she laughed it off, not wanting to spook Chloe, who was playing nearby. "Just stories, right? Every old house has them." Martha's gaze sharpened. "Stories start somewhere, dear. Be careful what you stir up." She left soon after, her warning hanging in the air like smoke. The day wore on with small victories. A window unstuck, the yard partially cleared. But as evening deepened, tension coiled in Elizabeth's chest. Chloe fell asleep easily again, but Elizabeth couldn't shake Martha's words. She paced the living room, the silver key heavy in her pocket. Midnight came, and with it, the tapping, fainter than the knocks, rhythmic, emanating from inside the walls, like a message in code. She pressed her ear to the paneling, heart pounding. Nothing. Then it came again, tap, tap, tap. The house didn't feel empty. It felt aware. Elizabeth shook off the unease the next morning, chalking it up to exhaustion and the strangeness of a new place. Sunlight filtered through the cracked windows, casting long shadows that danced like hesitant guests. She couldn't afford to dwell on ghost stories, not with Chloe's inhaler running low and the roof threatening to leak at the next rain. Action was her anchor now. She rolled up her sleeves and turned the cottage into a battlefield against neglect, enlisting Chloe in the fray. "Mommy's little helper," she called her daughter, handing her a small broom to sweep the corners while Elizabeth tackled the bigger messes. They scrubbed the kitchen counters until the wood gleamed faintly, patched a hole in the bedroom wall with duct tape and cardboard. A temporary fix, but it held. Chloe giggled as she helped hammer nails into loose baseboards, her small hands steady despite the occasional wheeze. "We're building a castle," she declared, stacking empty boxes like turrets in the living room. Elizabeth's heart warmed. For the first time since the divorce, she saw sparks of joy in her girl's eyes, not just the shadow of worry. As the days blurred into a rhythm of repairs, Chloe wandered outside more, drawn to the overgrown backyard where wildflowers poked through the weeds like forgotten promises. That's where she met Martha again, the elderly neighbor spotting her from over the fence. "Well, hello there, little one," Martha called, her voice carrying like a gentle breeze. Chloe, ever the social butterfly, waved back enthusiastically. Before long, they were chatting, Chloe sharing tales of her stuffed rabbit's adventures, Martha offering cookies from her pocket. Elizabeth watched from the window, grateful for the budding friendship. It gave her space to work uninterrupted, and Chloe needed allies in this quiet corner of the world. One afternoon, while Chloe played under Martha's watchful eye, Elizabeth turned her attention to the fireplace. The mantel was coated in grime, and a panel behind it looked loose, as if pried open before. She wedged a screwdriver into the seam, curiosity overriding caution. The wood gave way with a soft crack, revealing a narrow cavity stuffed with cobwebs and dust. Her fingers brushed something papery. She pulled it out carefully, an old envelope, yellowed with age, its edges frayed like whispers from the past. She unfolded the letter inside, the handwriting elegant but hurried, faded ink on brittle paper. It read, "If you've found the key, the truth is buried beneath the oak. Don't let them take it again." Elizabeth's breath caught. The silver key from the floorboard. She still had it in her pocket, cool against her skin. Who had written this? And what truth? The words stirred something in her, a shift from the creeping fear of the nights before to a spark of intrigue. This wasn't just an old house. It was a puzzle, one that begged to be solved. She tucked the letter away, her mind racing. Buried beneath the oak? There was a massive tree in the backyard, its roots twisting like veins into the earth. But digging? Now! She pushed the thought aside for the moment, focusing on the immediate, nailing the panel back in place before Chloe returned. That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Martha stopped by again, this time with a basket of fresh eggs from her hens. Chloe had invited her for tea, which meant lukewarm water in mismatched mugs. Elizabeth welcomed the company, the three of them sitting on the porch as crickets began their nightly chorus. Conversation flowed easily at first, town gossip, recipes for pie crust. But Elizabeth couldn't resist probing deeper. "Martha, you mentioned the Millers before," she said casually, stirring her mug. "What happened to them, really?" "Vanished, you said?" Martha's eyes clouded, her wrinkled hands tightening around her cup. She glanced at Chloe, who was busy drawing on a scrap of paper, before leaning in. "Henry and Clara Miller, with their daughter, little Hannah. She was about your girl's age. Henry was a scientist, brilliant man. Worked on some energy project back in the 80s. Something about harnessing the Earth's own power, clean and endless. Folks said he was onto something big, but he wouldn't sell out to the big companies sniffing around. Then one night in 82, they were just gone. No signs of struggle, no bodies ever found. The house sat empty after that, like it was waiting. Elizabeth felt a chill snake down her spine, the letter's words echoing in her mind. Buried truth. Don't let them take it. Waiting for what? She asked softly. Martha shrugged, her gaze distant. Answers, maybe. Or someone to finish what they started. Life's full of loose ends, dear. Like your own story, divorce starting over. Sometimes a broken path leads right where you're meant to be. The words landed gently, but they resonated. Elizabeth's life felt like a series of unfinished chapters. The marriage that crumbled, the job lost in the chaos, the constant scramble for stability. And now this house, with its own unresolved mystery. Was it coincidence or something more? A subtle thread connecting her fractures to the Miller's silence? She wasn't sure, but for the first time, the cottage didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a calling. That night, as Chloe snuggled into her sleeping bag with a contented sigh, Elizabeth lay awake, the letter and key on the makeshift nightstand beside her. Sleep came fitfully, pulling her into a dream where the walls breathed, soft and insistent. Voices whispered from beneath the floorboards, faint at first, then clearer. Find the light, find the light. She jolted awake before dawn, sweat beading on her forehead, the words lingering like an invitation, or a warning. The house was stirring her story into its own, and she wasn't sure if she could turn back now. The dream's whispers clung to Elizabeth like morning fog as she descended into the cellar the next day, flashlight in hand. The stairs creaked under her weight, protesting the intrusion into the damp, shadowy space below. Chloe was outside with Martha, learning to feed the chickens, her laughter filtering faintly through the floorboards. A reminder of the fragile normalcy Elizabeth was fighting to build. But the letter and key demanded answers, pulling her deeper into the cottage's secrets. The cellar was a forgotten archive, cluttered with mildewed boxes stacked against rough stone walls, the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. Spiderwebs draped like veils over old furniture remnants, and puddles gleamed in the corners from unseen leaks. Elizabeth shone her light around, spotting a cluster of cardboard boxes tucked in the far corner, their tops sagging under dust. Curiosity overrode the chill. She knelt and pried one open. Inside were reams of yellowed papers, blueprints scrawled with intricate diagrams, research notes filled with equations and sketches, and a handful of strange glass vials, their labels faded but legible. Project Aurora. She lifted one vial carefully, the glass cool and smooth, containing a residue of some crystalline substance that caught the light in iridescent sparks. The blueprints depicted coils and circuits, arrows indicating magnetic flows, with annotations like Earth's field amplification and zero-point energy prototype. It looked like science from another era, ambitious and arcane. Her pulse quickened. This tied back to Martha's tales, the millers, the vanishing. But what was Project Aurora? Elizabeth gathered a stack of the papers and vials, hauling them upstairs to the kitchen table. With Chloe occupied and the day stretching ahead, she fired up her old laptop, its battery life as precarious as her finances. Internet was spotty in Maplewood, courtesy of a borrowed hotspot from Martha, but it would have to do. She typed in searches: Henry Miller Inventor 1980s, Project Aurora Energy, careful to avoid anything that might drain her data too fast. Piecing together fragments from archived articles and obscure forums, a picture emerged. Henry Miller hadn't been just any scientist. He was an independent engineer in the early 80s, tinkering in his rural workshop on a clean energy device that harnessed the planet's magnetic fields. Revolutionary for its time, no fuel, no emissions, just a compact generator that could power a home indefinitely by tapping into geomagnetic forces. Notes in the boxes referenced prototypes that lit bulbs without wires, defying the era's reliance on fossil fuels. It was the kind of breakthrough that could have upended industries, making energy free and accessible. But then the trail darkened. According to a few digitized newspaper clippings from 1982, Miller had been approached by a major energy corporation, names redacted in some reports, but whispers pointed to a conglomerate with deep ties to oil and gas. He refused their buyout offers, insisting his invention belonged to the public, not profiteers. Weeks later, he, his wife Clara, and their daughter Hannah disappeared without a trace. No ransom demands, no bodies, just an empty house and silenced rumors. Investigations fizzled, labeled a tragic runaway or accident, but skeptics online, decades later, hinted at foul play, corporate sabotage to bury a threat to billions in profits. Elizabeth leaned back, the weight of it settling in her chest like a stone. This wasn't some dusty relic. It was extraordinary, a lost piece of history that could rewrite the future of energy. And dangerous, people had vanished over it. Her mind flashed to the letter. Don't let them take it again. Was the key part of this? The oak tree in the yard loomed larger in her thoughts, a guardian over buried truths. She glanced at the vials, wondering if they held remnants of the prototype's core. If this was real, she held something worth. What? Millions? A revolution? As the afternoon wore on, small anomalies began to weave into her awareness, blurring the line between the mundane and the mysterious. The cottage had no connected electricity yet. Elizabeth relied on a generator for basics. But twice that day, a lamp in the living room flickered faintly, its bulb glowing for seconds before dimming, as if drawing power from thin air. She checked the wiring, finding nothing amiss. At dusk, as she prepared a simple dinner of pasta from their dwindling supplies, a faint hum emanated from the walls, low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat pulsing through the structure. Chloe noticed it too, tilting her head. "Mommy, is the house singing?" she asked innocently. Elizabeth brushed it off with a laugh, but unease simmered. Was it the wind, settling foundations, or something tied to Project Aurora, residual energy lingering like a ghost? The hum faded as night fell, but it left her restless, connecting dots between the supernatural hints and these tangible stakes. This invention could explain the vanishings, the warnings. And now, she was entangled in it, a divorced mom with nothing but grit and a $500 gamble. That evening, after tucking Chloe in with a story about brave explorers, Elizabeth sat by the fireplace, the papers spread before her. She pulled out her notebook, a battered journal from better days, and scrawled her thoughts, the pen scratching like whispers in the quiet. Maybe this house didn't choose me by accident. Elizabeth closed her notebook, the words heavy in the firelight's glow, as if she'd written a vow she couldn't take back. The cottage was quiet now, save for Chloe's soft breaths from the next room and the occasional creak of settling wood. But the hum from the walls lingered in her memory, a puzzle piece that didn't fit. She tucked the journal away, trying to shake the feeling that the house was listening. By the end of the week, whispers about the Miller place had spread through Maplewood's sparse community like wildfire through dry grass. Locals nodded at Elizabeth in the general store, their eyes curious but guarded, as if she'd stirred something long dormant. Chloe, oblivious to the gossip, skipped through town holding Martha's hand, chattering about the cottage's secret rooms she swore existed. Elizabeth smiled through the unease, focusing on patching the roof and scrubbing walls, each task a small defiance against the chaos of her past. But the town's murmurs followed her, a reminder that the Miller place wasn't just hers. It was a legend. On a crisp Tuesday morning, as Elizabeth wrestled with a stuck window frame, a black sedan rolled up the dirt lane, its polished surface glaringly out of place against the wild pines. Two men stepped out, their dark suits sharp as knives, their faces unreadable behind mirrored sunglasses. The taller one, with a jaw like carved stone, approached the porch, a clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Walter?" he asked, his voice smooth but cold, like ice on a river. "It's Ms.," Elizabeth corrected, wiping sawdust from her hands. "Can I help you?" "We represent Pinnacle Development," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the horizon. "We've acquired land nearby for a project. Saw the activity here and thought we'd make an offer on your property. Cash, immediate." His partner, shorter and wiry, stood silent, scanning the cottage like a predator sizing up prey. Elizabeth's stomach tightened. The letter's warning, "Don't let them take it again," flashed in her mind. "It's not for sale," she said firmly. "We're making it our home." The tall man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "It's a generous offer, Ms. Walter. This area, it's not safe for families. Old houses, remote. Things happen." His tone was casual, but the weight of it pressed against her chest. "I'll manage," she replied, crossing her arms. "Thanks for stopping by." They lingered a moment, the air thick with unspoken tension, before the tall man nodded. "We'll be in touch." They returned to their sedan and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust that hung like a warning. That night, unease settled over the cottage like a fog. Elizabeth double-checked the locks, her hands shaking as she secured the windows. She told herself it was nothing, just pushy developers, but the men's words echoed Martha's tales of the Miller's disappearance. As she and Chloe ate canned soup by candlelight, a crash from the backyard jolted her. She grabbed the flashlight and stepped outside, heart pounding. Her toolbox, left by the porch, was overturned, its contents scattered. A hammer and screwdriver were gone. She scanned the darkness, the pines whispering secrets, but saw no one. The next morning, she found one of the boarded windows cracked, a spiderweb of fractures radiating from its center. By evening, her car, her lifeline to town, sat lopsided, all four tires slashed. Fear clawed at her, sharp and cold. Someone was watching, testing her resolve. She kept Chloe close, inventing games to distract her, but the girl's usual spark dimmed. "Mommy, is someone mad at us?" she asked, clutching her rabbit. No, baby, Elizabeth lied, smoothing her daughter's hair. Just, old houses make funny noises. But Chloe's sleepwalking started that night. Elizabeth woke to find her daughter in the living room, barefoot on the cold floor, whispering, "The man with the light, he's here." Her small voice was dreamy, her eyes half open. Elizabeth guided her back to bed, heart racing, but Chloe remembered nothing by morning. The words haunted Elizabeth, tying back to her dream, "Find the light." Was it coincidence, or was the house speaking through her child? The incidents piled up, each one chipping at her courage. She called the sheriff, but with no proof of trespassers, he could only promise to keep an eye out. Martha, bringing over a jar of preserves, frowned when Elizabeth recounted the visit. "Pinnacle, you say? Never heard of them, and I know every soul in this county. Be careful, Liz." The Millers had visitors like that before they vanished. Fear and defiance warred in Elizabeth's chest. She couldn't run, not with $27 left and nowhere to go. Chloe's asthma was worsening in the damp cottage air, her inhaler nearly empty. The letter's clue, "The truth is buried beneath the oak," felt like her only path forward. If Project Aurora was real, if it was tied to the Miller's fate, maybe it held answers. Maybe it held power. On a grey afternoon, with Chloe napping under Martha's care, Elizabeth grabbed a shovel from the shed and headed to the backyard. The old oak loomed, its gnarled branches stretching like arms guarding a secret. She hesitated, the weight of the past weeks pressing down. Divorce, loss, now this shadow of danger. But her mother's voice echoed. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the truest freedoms. She drove the shovel into the earth, the soil soft from recent rain. She dug, sweat mixing with dirt, roots snapping under her blade. An hour passed, then another, her arms aching but her resolve unyielding. Then a dull thunk. Her shovel hit something solid, metallic, buried deep beneath the oak's roots. She froze, breath catching, as the ground seemed to hum faintly beneath her feet. Elizabeth dropped to her knees, scraping away the dirt with her hands, the soil cool and clinging. Roots snaked around the object like protective tendrils, but she pried them aside, her nails breaking in the effort. Finally, she unearthed it, a rusted metal box, no larger than a briefcase, wrapped in weathered oilcloth that crackled as she unfolded it. The box was heavy, its surface etched with faint scratches, as if it had fought to stay hidden. Her heart hammered. This was it, the truth from the letter, buried for decades. She glanced toward Martha's house, where Chloe's laughter echoed faintly, safe for now. With trembling fingers, Elizabeth popped the latch. Inside, nestled in faded padding, was a small silver device, sleek and cylindrical, about the size of a thermos. It gleamed unnaturally, as if polished by time rather than tarnished. As she lifted it, a faint pulse of light emanated from its core, a soft blue glow that flickered like a heartbeat, warming her palm. No batteries, no wires, just an otherworldly hum that vibrated through her bones. Project Aurora, Henry Miller's invention, alive after all these years. Tucked beside it was a folded note, the paper brittle, ink fading but legible in elegant script. To whoever finds this, truth is light. Protect it from those who trade in shadows. The words sent a shiver through her, echoing Martha's warnings and the letter from the wall. Shadows, corporate greed, vanishings, slashed tires. This wasn't just a gadget. It was a weapon against empires built on oil and lies. Elizabeth's mind raced. Clean energy, infinite. buried to silence a threat. She set the device down carefully, its glow dimming as if sensing her awe. She couldn't keep this to herself. Grabbing her phone, she snapped photos. Every angle of the box, the device, the note, then gathered the blueprints and vials from the cellar, spreading them out like evidence in a trial. Her old laptop whirred to life, and she uploaded everything to a secure cloud folder, her fingers flying. Who to trust? Not the authorities, not yet. She thought of Riley Thompson, an independent journalist she'd followed online for years, a fierce investigator of corporate scandals who'd exposed rigged elections and environmental cover-ups. Elizabeth drafted a message on her site's contact form. I have proof of a 1980s energy conspiracy. Missing inventor. Device that works. They're after me now. She attached a teaser photo of the glowing prototype and hit send, her breath shallow. It was a risk, but silence was deadlier. As dusk crept in, painting the sky in bruised purples, the black sedan returned. Elizabeth spotted it from the kitchen window, her stomach dropping. The two men emerged, more purposeful this time, one carrying a briefcase, the other scanning the yard like he owned it. They pounded on the door, the knocks echoing through the cottage. Ms. Walter, the tall one called, his voice edged with steel. We're here for a safety inspection. County ordnance, old properties like this need clearance. Elizabeth cracked the door, chain latched, Chloe peeking from behind her legs. I didn't request any inspection. Leave, or I'll call the sheriff. The shorter man stepped forward, his smile a thin veneer. Open up, ma'am. It's for your own good. We know what's buried here. Hazards, you understand. His eyes flicked to the oak tree, the fresh dirt visible even in the fading light. Fear turned to fury in her veins. Buried hazards? They knew. About the device, the Millers. Get off my property, she snapped, slamming the door. Through the peephole, she watched them exchange glances, the tall one reaching for the knob. A shout cut the tension. Martha, hobbling down the lane with her phone raised. I've got the sheriff on the line. You boys best skedaddle before he gets here with questions. The men hesitated, then retreated to their car, tires spitting gravel as they sped off. Minutes later, Sheriff Harlan pulled up in his cruiser, lights flashing but sirens silent. He was a burly man in his 50s, with a mustache like a broom and eyes that missed nothing. Martha filled him in breathlessly, while Elizabeth stood on the porch, arms wrapped around Chloe. Pinnacle Development, huh? The sheriff grunted, scribbling notes. No such company registered in the county. But those plates, traced them once before. Linked to subsidiaries of Enercorp, big energy firm out of the city. Accused of industrial espionage back in the day. Stealing tech, silencing whistleblowers. Never stuck, but folks disappeared around their projects. Elizabeth's blood ran cold. Enercorp, the same conglomerate that had hounded Henry Miller. Espionage. Disappearances. You think they killed the Millers? Harlan's face hardened. Can't say official-like, but patterns don't lie. Watch your back, Ms. Walter. I'll patrol more, but these types don't scare easy. As he drove off, Martha squeezed her arm. You dug it up, didn't you? Be smart, girl. Elizabeth nodded, ushering Chloe inside. The device sat on the table, its glow a beacon in the dim room. They'd killed for this once before, erased a family to bury the light. And now they were circling her, a single mom with everything to lose. But she had the truth now, pulsing in her hands. Riley's response pinged on her phone, intrigued. Send more. Meeting tomorrow? The escalation had begun. She wouldn't let the shadows win. Elizabeth barely slept, her mind churning with plans and fears. By dawn, she'd packed the Aurora device, the letters, and the blueprints into a backpack, its weight a reminder of the stakes. Riley had arranged a meeting in town, neutral ground at a diner where her contact, a courier for a national outlet, would collect the evidence. Multiple submissions, Riley had texted. Flood the system. They can't silence everyone. Elizabeth agreed. Exposure was her shield, but it meant moving fast. She woke Chloe gently, dressing her in a warm jacket. "We're going on a little trip, baby," she whispered, forcing a smile. Chloe rubbed her eyes, clutching her rabbit, still murmuring about the man with the light from her sleepwalking episode. Elizabeth's heart clenched, but there was no time for doubt. She left a note for Martha, gone to town, back by noon, and loaded the backpack into their beat-up sedan. The device's faint hum seemed to pulse through the car as she strapped Chloe into the back seat. The drive to Maplewood's main street was quiet, the early morning mist curling through the pines like ghostly fingers. Elizabeth's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror every few seconds, the sheriff's warning about Ennercorp echoing in her mind. As she turned onto the county road, a black sedan appeared in the distance, its sleek shape unmistakable. Her pulse spiked. They were tailing her. "Hold tight, sweetie," she told Chloe, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She pressed the gas, the old car groaning as it picked up speed. The sedan followed, closing the gap on the narrow, twisting backroads. Elizabeth's mind raced. She knew these roads from her cleaning jobs, shortcuts the suits likely didn't. She veered left onto a gravel path, tires skidding, dust clouding behind her to obscure their view. The sedan hesitated, then pursued, its engine a low growl. Chloe whimpered, sensing the tension. "Mommy, why are we going so fast?" "Just a game, baby," Elizabeth lied, taking another sharp turn toward a logging trail. Branches scraped the car's sides, and the sedan struggled to keep pace on the uneven terrain. At a fork, she swerved right, cutting through a field and onto a paved road, the diner's neon sign visible in the distance. The sedan was gone, for now. She exhaled, sweat beading on her forehead, and parked behind the diner, out of sight. Inside, the courier, a wiry woman with sharp eyes named Lena, waited in a corner booth. Elizabeth slid the backpack across, keeping Chloe close. "Everything's in there," she whispered. "Photos, documents, the device. Riley said you'd know what to do." Lena nodded, her gaze scanning the room. "We're sending it to 6 outlets tonight, print, digital, even a whistleblower site. Untraceable to you for now. But stay low, Ms. Walter. These people don't play." She left with the bag, her steps quick and purposeful. Elizabeth drove home slowly, watching for the sedan, but the roads stayed clear. Back at the cottage, she locked the doors and drew the curtains, her nerves frayed. Chloe drew pictures of glowing stars at the kitchen table, oblivious to the storm brewing. Elizabeth kept her phone close, refreshing news sites obsessively. By the third day, it hit. Headlines exploded across the internet. Missing inventors' work found, energy conglomerate linked to decades-old disappearances. The Maplewood Gazette ran a local angle, while national outlets dug deeper, citing anonymous sources and leaked documents. The Aurora device, with its potential to disrupt global energy markets, was the centerpiece, a clean energy prototype suppressed for decades. Federal investigators reopened the Miller case, subpoenaing Enercorp executives whose names matched the redacted files from Elizabeth's research. Social media buzzed, hashtags like #AuroraTruth trending as the public demanded justice. Elizabeth's name stayed out of it at first, as promised, but small towns talk. By week's end, a local reporter connected the dots. The single mother in the Miller place, the one who'd bid $500 on a ruin and unearthed a scandal. Martha fielded curious neighbors at the fence, waving them off with a grumble, while Sheriff Harlan increased patrols around the cottage. The black sedan never returned. Whether scared off by the spotlight or biding their time, Elizabeth didn't know, but the absence felt like a held breath, not a victory. She sat by the fireplace that night, Chloe asleep upstairs, the walls quiet for the first time in weeks. No hums, no taps, just the crackle of logs. The device was gone, safe in the hands of researchers now dissecting its secrets for the public good. The Millers' story was breathing again, their light no longer buried. Elizabeth opened her notebook, tracing the words she'd written. Maybe this house didn't choose me by accident. For the first time, she believed it. She'd been broken, penniless, a nobody, but she'd faced the shadows and won. In the days that followed, Elizabeth's story rippled across the internet like a stone skipped on a still lake. The headlines morphed from corporate exposés to human triumph. Single mom's $500 risk uncovers decades-old conspiracy. Bloggers and influencers shared her tale, piecing together the anonymous hero of Maplewood's Miller place with the woman who'd sparked a global reckoning. A crowdfunding campaign sprang up without her asking, started by a stranger moved by her courage, raising thousands to restore the cottage. Messages flooded her inbox. You gave hope to us all. Keep shining, Elizabeth. She read them through tears, Chloe curled beside her, unaware of the world now rooting for them. With the funds, Elizabeth transformed the cottage. Volunteers from town, some once skeptical neighbors, helped replace the sagging roof, mend cracked windows, and paint the walls a soft cream that glowed in the morning light. The ivy-choked mailbox was freed, its metal polished to a shine. Chloe planted wildflowers in the yard, her small hands patting soil with care, her asthma eased by cleaner air and a new inhaler paid for by donations. The oak tree stood sentinel, its roots no longer hiding secrets, but anchoring a reborn home. Elizabeth renamed the cottage Aurora House, a tribute to the Millers' invention and the family silenced for their vision. A wooden sign hung above the porch, carved by Martha's nephew, the letters bold against the grain. Scientists, meanwhile, verified the Aurora device's authenticity in labs far from Maplewood. Their findings stunned the world. Henry Miller's prototype, powered by the Earth's magnetic fields, could generate clean energy indefinitely. No fuel, no waste, just a hum of possibility. Articles hailed it as a game changer, a blueprint for a sustainable future. Elizabeth followed the news, her heart swelling with quiet pride. But when offers came, corporations dangling millions for the device, she refused. Instead, she donated it to a public research trust under Henry Miller's name, ensuring his dream stayed free from the shadows that had hunted it. A letter arrived from a distant Miller cousin, found through reopened investigations. You brought our family's light back. Thank you. Aurora House became a beacon. Visitors trickled in, journalists, curious locals, even activists inspired by the story, leaving handwritten letters and flowers at the oak tree, a makeshift shrine to resilience. To the Millers and Elizabeth, one note read, for showing us truth can outlast greed. Chloe, now 7, collected the notes in a scrapbook, her eyes bright with wonder. "Mommy, are we famous?" she asked one evening, her crayons scattered across the kitchen table. Elizabeth laughed, ruffling her daughter's hair. "Not famous, baby. Just found." She gazed out the window at the oak, its branches swaying in the spring breeze. The cottage no longer whispered secrets. It sang with warmth, its walls solid, its heart open. Inspired, Elizabeth began writing. Late at night, after Chloe slept, she filled her notebook with the story of Aurora House. Not just the mystery, but the journey from ruin to redemption. She titled it The Light Beneath the Oak, each chapter a step toward reclaiming herself. The broken ex-wife, the penniless mother, the woman who'd cried in a motel room, she was gone. In her place stood someone new, a woman of purpose, forged by risk and resolve. The words flowed easily, her pen tracing the parallel between the cottage's rebirth and her own. Every nail hammered, every secret unearthed, had rebuilt her too. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the kitchen, Chloe looked up from her coloring. "Mommy, is our house magic now?" Elizabeth smiled, stirring oatmeal on their new stove. "No, sweetie. It's just awake. Like us." She glanced at the fireplace where the letter had first appeared, its mantel now adorned with Chloe's drawings and a photo of them laughing under the oak. The walls didn't hum anymore, but they held her story, hers and the miller's, in every grain of wood. Outside, the wildflowers bloomed, and the oak stood tall, its roots deep in earth no longer hiding but healing. Elizabeth wasn't broken anymore. She was chosen. Spring arrived in Maplewood with a gentle hand, coaxing green from the earth and warmth from the air. Elizabeth sat by the kitchen window, a mug of coffee steaming in her hands, as sunlight spilled across the cottage's polished floors. Chloe perched beside her, legs swinging, sketching a picture of the oak tree with crayons that spilled vibrant hues across the page. The cottage, now Aurora House, felt alive, its walls no longer creaking with secrets, but humming with the quiet rhythm of a home reborn. The scars of winter, the slashed tires, the menacing shadows, had faded like a bad dream, replaced by the steady glow of purpose. Chloe paused, her crayon hovering. "Mommy, do you think this house is magic?" Her voice was soft, her eyes wide with the wonder only a child could hold, untouched by the weight of the past months. Elizabeth smiled, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. "No, baby. I think people are. We just forget until life breaks us open." She sipped her coffee, the words settling deep. Life had cracked her wide, divorce, desperation, a $500 gamble. But through those fractures, she'd found strength she hadn't known she possessed. The cottage had been her mirror, its broken walls reflecting her own until they both stood whole. That afternoon, Elizabeth drove to a quiet cemetery on the edge of town, Chloe's hand in hers. The Miller gravesite wasn't grand, just 3 simple stones, etched with names and dates, tucked beneath a willow tree. Henry, Clara, Hannah. No bodies had ever been found, but the town had laid them to rest in memory, a gesture of closure after decades of silence. Elizabeth knelt, placing a single white lily at the base of Henry's stone, its petals stark against the mossy ground. She whispered, "Your light didn't die. It just waited." The breeze stirred, carrying her words like a promise kept. Chloe squeezed her hand, not fully understanding, but feeling the weight of the moment. Back at Aurora House, the day melted into evening, the sky ablaze with pinks and golds. Elizabeth stood on the porch, watching the sunset paint the cottage in warm hues. Its lights flickered on, not from a generator or grid, but from a small Aurora prototype, a replica crafted by researchers who'd scaled Henry Miller's design for testing. Clean, infinite, peaceful, its energy hummed through the walls, a quiet testament to a dream that refused to be buried. The oak tree loomed in the yard, no longer a keeper of secrets, but a symbol of what could grow from courage. Elizabeth's notebook lay open on the kitchen table, pages filled with the light beneath the oak, her story of ruin and redemption nearing completion. It wasn't just about the Millers or the device. It was about her, about Chloe, about the magic of people who choose to rise when the world says fall. Crowdfunding had rebuilt their home, but it was their resilience that made it shine. Visitors still came, leaving notes and flowers, calling Aurora House a beacon of hope. Elizabeth read each one, her heart full, knowing she'd given the Millers light a voice. As night fell, she tucked Chloe into bed, the room aglow with a soft lamp powered by the Aurora's endless pulse. The girl yawned, clutching her rabbit. "Will we stay here forever, Mommy?" "Long as we need to, sweetie," Elizabeth replied, kissing her forehead. "This is our story now." The cottage stood radiant against the dusk, its windows casting golden beams across the wildflower-strewn yard. The oak tree swayed gently, its branches whispering in the breeze, as if echoing the truth that had finally found its way free. Sometimes, what looks like ruin is the beginning of a miracle. Elizabeth risked her last $500 on an abandoned cottage, and found not just a home, but hope buried beneath decades of silence. The house didn't just give her shelter, it gave her purpose. So when the world tells you it's too late, remember, sometimes the smallest risk unlocks the brightest light.